This video will show you how to make bar graphs. And so I'm in a spreadsheet view of Excel. And just before even starting, I want to point out that I'm in Microsoft Excel 2010 because that's what I have on my machine. What's on your machine might look slightly different, but the basic functionality is still the same. The names of the features that we're going to use are the same. So if you have a slightly different version of Excel, you should still be able to do all of the same things. It just might look a little different and you might access some of the options a little differently. So I put some data in already, and I have 3 different sets of data that I'm going to graph for you so you can see some different ways that Excel will create bar graphs. So the first set of data I have here is like what's in Lab 1, the experiment with bacteria. So fridge temp, room temp, and body temp, and then different amounts of bacteria. And so I'm going to highlight, using my mouse, that data, and then I go to Insert, and in this case we want a bar graph. And in Excel, a top to bottom bar graph is called a column. What they call a bar is side to side. So in Excel we're going to use a column, and I click on that and it shows me some options, and we'll just do the basic 2D column. And when I click on that, it generates a graph that looks like this, and this should look just like the one you drew pretty much in your lab manual. And there's little fancy features for changing the color and things like that. So here we already have on the x-axis the data that was over here on the left, and then it made the bars go to the values on the right. We're missing titles and labels for our axes, so we're going to do that by clicking on the graph. If I click off of the graph, notice that up here changed. So watch this part, and then I'm going to click back on the graph, and it created some options. So I'm going to go to Chart Tools, Layout, and under Chart Tools Layout we see Chart Title, and the default is none. We want a centered overlay title, and it creates a text box, and I can type in bacteria at different temps. You wouldn't want to use an abbreviation normally, but I'm trying to make this video not be too long here. So now I've got a chart title in there. I want axis titles. So I want a horizontal axis title, and again the default is none. I want to put one below the axis, and then I also want a vertical axis title, and again the default is none, but I like a rotated title there. So again it creates a, it creates a text box that you can click into. So I click into that, and then I can type, temperature. And then again over here, I can click, just trying to, and put in here number of bacteria. And so now I've got a graph that has a title and unit labels. Okay, so let me move that graph aside. So I can click and move it just like any other Office object. And then let me look at a different set of data. So this is like maybe a heart rate experiment where you took a heart rate before, and then these are different people's heart rates, and then you took their heart rate after some activity, like deep breathing, for example. So we have before, and then this would be person 1, this would be person 2, person 3. So if I highlight this data, it's going to do something a little bit different. So let me go ahead and go and Insert, Column, and again just that same 2D column, and it has done something a little bit different. So it took before and all the values underneath before and made these blue bars, and then it put next to it the after, so the after in a different color, and this is for individual 1, individual 2, individual 3, and so on. And again, how are we going to get to our chart options? We click on this, on the graph, we go to Layout, and then we want a chart title, we want axis titles, So I'm adding in all of those. And then again, you can click into those. You can move parts of the graph around. So you can see my axis title doesn't really have room because I moved that over. So that's created a little more space. All right. And then same thing here. So again, you can just kind of move stuff around the way you do with Word. All right, so axis title here. This was an individuals tested. And then maybe here, oops, you put in heart rate, and you put the units in parentheses. This is BPMs. And then we've got our before, after, and again, remember you can click into your heart rate, or into your title, heart rate, before and after, yada, yada, yada. Okay. All right, so that's our second type of bar graph that we can make. And then I'm going to move this one over as well. And then I've got a different example here. So this is a really complex experiment. We can still make a bar graph from it. So we've got baseline heart rate versus heart rate after exercise. So we have a before and after. But now instead of just having individuals, we have groups like boys, girls, young, old. And so I'm going to highlight this. And again, insert column. And it generates a really similar graph to the one we just looked at. We have the before, the baseline heart rate, the after, exercise heart rate. And then again, it took this leftmost information and put it along the bottom. So those are our different categories of individuals and their before and after heart rates. And then again, we can click on that, go to Chart Tools Layout, add a title, add our axis titles, add a vertical axis. So again, we've got all of our titles. We can click on our titles. Whoops, sorry, don't double click. That's what I keep doing. Click on our titles, group, and again, this is heart rate in BPMs. Okay. And a title. Okay. So just to recap, if you have data on the left or conditions on the left and data on the right, it'll create a simple bar graph where it puts the stuff on the left on the bottom and a bar for each one of those data points. If you have a before with many different individuals, after with many different individuals, it's going to create a graph that puts numbers underneath each one of those. Let me pull this up here to the top so you can see that better. So again, it kind of auto put in groups, said this is individual 1, individual 2, individual 3. So Excel assigned that on its own for each one of these data points, heart rate before and heart rate after. And then in this case, we assigned groups on the left and then had the before and after. And so it put boys, girls, young, and old instead of 1, 2, and 3 across the bottom, but still put in a before and after bar for each one of those groups or categories. So those are 3 different kinds of bar graphs that you might want to use over the semester. Remember, this will look slightly different if you have a different version of Excel. If you're ever in doubt about how to find a feature in your version of Excel, type in your version of Excel, for example, Excel 2010, chart options or whatever else you're looking for into Google, and you'll usually find some helpful advice about your specific version of Excel and how to find that functionality.